Hello, my Titanic terrified tots. Today's adventure will be breaking down the iceberg on the Amazing Digital Circus AUs. Kane, do we have to do this? Alright, Zibble, into the cellar you go. Wait, what? Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we're going to be breaking down the Amazing Digital Circus AU's iceberg. And there's a lot to get on this list. I've counted about 46 to 47. Oh my god, 46 entries. Correction, 53 entries. So there is quite a lot of reading to get through, but I feel like it's going to be worth it to at least one person out there. So you might as well just jump straight into it. So for tier 1 we have first entry on this layer or tier is the Amazing Digital Wonderland. This is a very interesting spin on the Digital Circus. It's basically taking the Digital Circus characters and placing them into the Alice Adventures in Wonderland, which is a classic by Lewis Carroll. And it's got some pretty interesting things. It's got a couple of comics, got a lot of concept stuff, and might as well just go straight into it. So there's a number of comics that are contained in this series, and essentially you're following Pomni throughout most of them, and each new installment has probably like an introduction to another character on the cast. So let's just go straight from the beginning. The first comic in this series is called Through the Looking Screen, and it's quite fun. It looks visually is quite interesting comic because it uses light, because it's basically this sort of a blank slate. You've got the line drawings, but then it has this, it does an interesting thing with the light, especially with the sort of yellow to signify Kaufmo, which is, he's alive in this comic, and he's called the White Clown, and essentially he's the one who leads Alice in the story, which is Pomni, into the Digital Wonderland. So I guess she works at like a TV store or something, because there's a lot of screens that are about when she's chasing the White Clown, and he's kind of zipping through different like screens, which is interesting through the panels, how it's reflected. I enjoyed the lighting. I had a lot of fun with the lighting on this one. Next comic in this series is called She Forgot How Food Works, and essentially it's just Pomni who's being misidentified as Mary Ann, who is Ragatha in this story, and we've got the White Clown who's trying to. He's like, I think he's like the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, he's looking at the time, checking the time. He's constantly worried about that. And Pomni has gone into his house, and she's hungry, so she eats the cake and she grows inside. And I love the panel where she's growing, because there's one panel with her eye, which I don't think I have. I'm not going to show you right now, but the way they show like really expressive characterizations in these panels is fantastic. I love this. I love this comic. So again, to the next one in the series called The Gardens of Gloinks. So this is where we get the Gloinks introduced into the Wonderland AU, and there's a funny expression from Pomni when the Gloink Queen or just the Gloink is saying that's because we're not flowers. And you have the Gloinks who are all flowers surrounding Pomni, and they sing, and there's another funny panel which just shows the reaction of Pomni to just these like a chorus of screams from the Gloinks, which I really enjoyed. Moving to the next one. Next part of the comic it's called Taking Advice from a Mixer-Pillar. And this is where we get Zubul introduced into the Wonderland universe. And I love the fact that Zubul, the way she smokes the pipe, she's doing it to the side of her head, which I thought was just funny, like a little detail on the panel. And yeah, again with Pomni growing, it's just beautifully expressive, where her neck just extends up into, I guess, towards the heavens. You know, that was quite a nice comic panel. Next one, we got Taking Directions from a Rabbit, which is explained in 2 parts, and this is where we got Pomni and Jax. So Jax is the Chester cat, and it's a funny conversation because Jax essentially he's the one who's initiating the conversation, and he just acts like he doesn't know what Pomni's talking about, which is quite nice, especially taking the inspiration from the source material. And the next one, Mustard! This is where we got Kane and Bubble. Kane is baking a cake, and Bubble then produces, as we all know, mustard. And beautiful characterizations again with the way Kane's like the tongue and its expressions and the panels really show through. Next one, Comedy and Tragedy. You might be able to guess this one, who the characters for this one is. It's Gangle. So I did like these panels in this one, and I thought it was a great name for this character in this comic series, or this edition of the comic. And there is a pretty funny bit where I could imagine it being in the show, where essentially Pomni doesn't really want to listen to Gangle's sob story, but then she goes on anyway. So there's a funny expression there as well. The final one, or the penultimate comic in the series called Nothing Whatever, and it's just a very, very short trial comic to introduce the Red Queen, which is supposed to be Queenie, so Kinga's wife from the Amazing Digital Circus, and it just has 3 panels which got Kinga, Bubble, and Queenie in there just to demonstrate what the characters might be in the future. And the final one I quite like, which is essentially taken the Tim Burton version of Alice in Wonderland, and it's called Bound in Madness. And you feel sympathy for Kane, or at least I did, because in these panels, because it's just showing like Kane frightened, and it's just like a wholesome moment between Pomni and Kane, and that's practically that entire, or what's released so far comic-wise in that series, and I did enjoy it. The only criticism I could probably have is just that it's basically just from the viewpoint of Pomni, so you're getting parts of the characters, but technically you're just getting a character per comic edition. However, in more time they might be able to develop it and reintroduce the characters again and again. But I did enjoy the way they played around with it, and I did like the sort of the concepts, so giving the character cards. Alright, so that's the first of 7 on this tier. Just before we move on, I'm just going to quickly say that the Amazing Digital Wonderland, I found it through Tumblr on Endomentendo. So please go and check out that Tumblr page and give support to the artist. I'll link in the description all of the places I found these comics, or even if they're just the written text where I found them, and those sources will be in the description, so please check them out and please support these artists. And on to the next one. Alright, so for this next category, there is a lot of human AUs, so basically the idea of taking the characters from the circus and putting them into a human real-world scenario. One of these is called Back to Reality, which I discovered on a Twitter account called Zoidberg Pigeon. Due to the nature of a lot of their work saying don't repost, I'm just going to play it safe, and I'm just going to describe this one. I might put some funny images on the screen as well. But I did enjoy this concept, so let's kind of break this one down. So there's a couple of concept images. There's one where it's like real-world Pomni looking at Jax's slippers, or Jax avatar type slippers, but essentially there's like the whole part of this one is just essentially one where it's Pomni's POV and then it's Jax's POV. So in this comic, Pomni's real name is called Christine, which is revealed by like her mom, and you have her escaping the circus and pretending her memories wiped to law enforcement, and that's an intriguing spin on. There's an intriguing spin later on, which is of Pomni essentially feeling out of place in the real world now, so it's twisting the narrative from the show, which essentially she doesn't feel like she belongs in the game world, and now it's taken that to the real world, and she's missing other people from the circus. So there's also a concept for Gangle's human design. We don't see a Gangle interacting with any of the other characters, and we see throughout these like comic images that Pomni wants to see Jax. And there's a nice quote here that I've got, which is even if the circus was a prison, its prisoners were still human. So it's obviously like the idea of Pomni. She had a connection with the people in the circus, and now they're all spread out into the real world. And also Reddit is mentioned in one of the panels, so you got that. And you see Jax is actually the person who reaches out to Pomni. And I also like how on one of the panels it has Jax's phone number, which is censored with the Kane censor bar, which I thought was quite a neat idea. And in the comic series, it says that Jax took 2 months to find Pomni, which is some crazy dedication. And we also find out in the series that Jax is named Felix, so we know Christine and Felix in the real world, who were Jax and Pomni. Yeah, and we see this theme of Pomni being nervous to meet Jax, and the same with Jax with Pomni. And there's an interesting slide where Pomni's trying on outfits for the meetup to get a phone call, and then they want to meet up, and she puts on Jax inspired overall, which I thought was nice. And yeah, we also get some concepts of Jax compared to real life Jax in like the same poses, which is a nice idea. And we see sort of similar imagery to the last act with the whole idea of like Jax being underneath a street lamp. So I had that one connection that I noted down. And we also get Jax's POV, and the only critique about this series is the fact that if they're all waking up in the same location, which I guess is, you know, the offices of CNA, and he then reports to the police that he doesn't remember anything for 4 years, and he wakes up in this building, and he reports that's where he's been, where he woke up. You're telling me no police enforcement or law enforcement are gonna check up on that? But anyway, get to the actual stuff. We got Jax hugging his mother, and Jax feeling out of place, and it shows this different dynamic between him and his mother than the actual show, which is an interesting take. We get a cool panel, which I really enjoyed, which I wish I could show on this, but I'm not going to. And it's got Jax staring, or Felix staring at his own reflection, and the reflection is of Jax, so his avatar, while he's getting driven somewhere. And yeah, Jax doesn't have a good relationship with his mother's boyfriend or husband, and there's this fun idea of Jax now feeling replaced. So he comes back and he finds out he's got a 4-year-old sister who's essentially, his mom was pregnant when he disappeared into the circus, so now he just feels like he's been replaced. Apparently every 2 months he gets to like his younger sister, and you also get this idea of Jax longing to see Pomni. And Kingo, who he refers to as an old lunatic, which I thought was funny. And we get this cute panel in the circus of Pomni leaning on Jax's shoulder, basically annoying him to talk to her. And we have this thing of Felix in the real world is now having nightmares of either him abstracting or Pomni or Ribbit. So I also think in this universe, if I had to guess, that means the abstracted individuals are truly lost, so they're not going back to the real world because they're still in the circus, they're trapped in the basement, the cellar. And we get a couple concepts. We get like a concept of Jax and Pomni in the real world together, and we see Jax struggling to find Pomni's urban exploration YouTube channel. So he's like listening to voices, he's trying to find a gap in the accounts uploads when Pomni was missing. And Jax creates this new YouTube account called JaxBoy452, and Pomni's YouTube account she changes to Pomni with a bunch of O's. And we see Jax's nose talk to Pomni. Jax learns Pomni's name is Christine. Jax dyed his hair because now they've agreed to meet up, so he's dyed his hair purple, and he's going to wear a purple bomber jacket. And you'll see the same thing with Pomni trying to look like a game avatar, so she's wearing the same colours, like the tricolours of her character. And then we see a fun part with Jax's mom, who's now concerned about him dyeing his hair all of a sudden out of the blue. And then we see there's another panel which just shows Jax and Pomni with his 4-year-old sister. And then we see a couple of panels at the end, which I guess wraps up the series, which essentially is Pomni and Jax, one of them kissing, one of them in the real world trying on outfits or having the outfits that made them look like game avatars. And there's one where I guess Pomni is wearing like an Ariel, like the Disney princess outfit. Overall, good art. Unfortunately can't show it on here, but if you want to go check it out, please feel free, support the artist, and we'll move on to the next one. Alright, for the next one I'm going to break the first rule and I'm going to talk about it. So the Amazing Digital Fight Club. Found this on TUMBLR, so borrow Tello, and it's got some very, very cool character concepts. Some highlights I like to quickly pick out. We've got Kingo. I love his moveset, how he's got, for his defense, is called Cufflink, which I thought was quite neat. And we've also got Gangle. She's got Whiplash as her attack move, which I thought was pretty apt. And this one seems to be framed as Kane trying to help Pomni win the championship, which I presume is against the rest of the cast and maybe other AI characters. So it's not a comic yet, and it's got a fundraiser for an animated short, which succeeded in its goal, I believe, last year, the 2025. However, I couldn't find the animation. But it has got a whole website from BlipTunes, and it's got a nice website layout. However, I wasn't able to find the animation, and I could see it apart from the preview. So a very cool concept. Hopefully I'll see something more from this in the future. Now moving on to the next one. Have you ever imagined if the cast of the Amazing Digital Circus worked at a place called Dunder Mifflin's paper company? Well, now you don't have to. Welcome to the Amazing Digital Office. This has a very interesting sort of canon. There's a nice group picture of the cast, at least 5 of them. And essentially this is a spin on the Amazing Digital Circus by making it an accounting team in a company called CNA. And one of the major parts of this AU is Bunny Doll. So it's Ragatha and Jax that have a relationship in this one. It's a very short one. It's only got 3 comics, and they're quite short in length, but it's an interesting concept, interesting take. So a couple of the characters, we have Ragatha, who's a crush on Jax. We got Kane, who's a co-founder of CNA. Jax, who teases Ragatha, and Jax has apparently got a secret according to his card. So from the 3 comics, the first one is called Pomni's First Day at the Office. And essentially just Pomni on her first day with Ragatha offering her help, like an open invitation to talk anytime, with Jax not doing that. Then we've got a second one, which is teasing at work. This is where Jax kisses Ragatha on the forehead. It's a teasing thing. And then it introduces Zubul, who's basically just on a smoke break. And the last one, we've got a normal day at the office, where Jax is slacking off at work, and Ragatha is doing her work, but Jax wants to go on a work break, so he is dragging her along. And I think there's a nice take on this. And also the creator, just for a fun fact, ships Kane and Pomni. So there you go. Please support this artist and check him out. On to the next one. Alright, for this next one we got the Amazing Digital Carnival, which is from SM-Baby. In this one we got quite a few entry cards. This is a concept at the moment and it's very interesting. So what do we start with? This concept tries to turn the idea of the circus on its head. So instead of the cast being real people, they're now AIs, and Kane, who was an AI, is now a person. So Kane gets sucked into the digital carnival because he's a programmer and he's trying to work on some code. So apparently he worked at a company that was CNA, and CNA, I think in this universe, is a video game company. Could be wrong though. So we're just going to kind of go through the characters. So Pomni is apparently the only good AI to Kane, and then apparently all the rest are evil AIs, or like bosses, or such things as like on their levels. So Pomni is called the Jester, and she is terrible at her job and runs away in a fight. So fantastic abilities right there. Ragatha, the host, she's apparently a perfectionist. We've got Gangle, the storyteller, favors Pomni as an actor because she breaks down on stage, which I found riveting, funny. And then we got Jax, and Jax apparently very bloodthirsty in this AU, and fun fact, Gangle refers to him as sexy man. So there's that. Zubul is called the Game Master, and apparently she's built this whole mazes and booby traps around her in her level, which prevents you from actually moving on to the next level, I guess, or getting the prize in the game room. So her fun house, I thought it was a really fun concept, is connected to her emotions. And I like the small touches that Zubul allows Gangle to easily reach her, but not Jax, which kind of tracks from the TV show, the YouTube show. We got Kingo, the king, and unlike the source material, he doesn't care for your personal well-being. So he can put you in a dangerous situation if it's funny for him. Kane. So Kane in this, he's basically trying to fix the code. So he's a programmer, and a few things he does actually fix before getting sucked into the game is programming the day and night cycle. So like the show, he's created the moon and night AIs, or the moon and sun AIs, and he's also created Bubble. So like Bubble in this is just an AI helper, so he's like the tutorial bot, and he's a thing that Kane puts his memory into, so I guess he doesn't lose it when he goes into a level or something. And we've got Kane. He actually programs the Gloink Queen as well, but she gets downgraded to a mini boss instead of an actual boss. I think the Gloinks are now pets of Zubul. And here's another fun fact for you. So the player character, who's actually Abel, so this is supposed to be Kane's brother, who's a playtester who gets trapped in the machine. She also refers to him as sexy man. So Gangle is a thing for Abel and Jax, apparently. We've got Kothmo. So Kothmo's card is essentially revealing that, well, he actually has a redacted section in his card. So I don't know if he worked at a CIA black site in his part, like in his game, but who knows? And he abstracts the same day Pomni gets sentience as an AI. So I like that concept of the AIs gaining sentience. That's how they enter the circus, essentially, instead of them being just normal people getting sucked into the machine. And unique to this AU, at least from what I can gather, there's this whole concept of collars. So Queenie, who's the queen in this AU, she abstracts, and it might have something to do with the collars. So taking the collar off might make you abstract as an AI. And this artist, just to give a warning out there, has a lot of NSFW content associated with her. So if you're interested in this concept, because I enjoyed the concept here of the carnival, then please check out the art support. Just give you a heads up on the NSFW stuff. And let's move on to the last one for this tier. Alright, for the final entry on this tier, we have the Amazing Digital Guardians. Now this was a very, very fun read, and I really liked the spin they did on the introduction to the Amazing Digital Circus from what they've taken. And in total, this is a 5 comic series. The first one is called Dropped into the Digital World. Now, there is an interesting line at the beginning of like the first panel. I think it says Kane is talking to someone called like Anon, which I don't know who Anon is, but this might just be a reference that goes over my head. But essentially this comic opens with the idea that there is their concept of the universe is like the surface realities where humans are living, so like the human variants, I guess, of the Amazing Digital Circus cast live in that part, and as it gets closer you get to like the middle layers of digital realities, and its center is this digital world. And the idea is that the digital world contains the source code that every single reality is built off. So they set Kane as like the master of the source code to protect reality from, I guess, collapsing. And this comic ends with Pomni falling into the digital world, which then leads into the second comic, which is where Pomni is entering the digital world. And the first panel for this comic, I have to say, is a beautiful panel. You need to check it out, it's amazing. And I love the fact that they do like a bounce drawing of Pomni and she hits the floor. And it just shows Pomni is surrounded by abstractions. Which then moves on to the comic 3, which is called The Guardians Enter. And throughout the comic series, it just has Ragatha calling Pomni and referring to her as short stuff. And we have Kothmo in this comic, where we get introduced to him for the first time. And I'm going to show you this frame on the screen. There is no reason that this frame has to go so hard. It's got Kinger. Look at Kinger in this, amazing. So King is referred to as the boss by other members of the cast in this. And now quickly moving on to comic 4, it's titled Error. And this is where Ragatha welcomes Pomni to what I would assume is the AU's equivalent of the circus tent, which is the Guardians Guild. And there's a really nice panel in here which Pomni's like disappointed because Ragatha's essentially saying, okay, we're not going to tell you the nature of this place because you're going to be gone soon. So she's now sad about that, and I like that dynamic. And then we got Kane in this comic referring to Pomni as a fallen. So as soon as it just happens regularly, the people fall from the sky into this central reality or central place. And like the original opening to the Amazing Digital Circus, Pomni can't remember her own name, and Kane is going to try and send Pomni back. And this is where an error occurs and Pomni can't be transported back. And it's moved into comic 5, where it's called Stuck Together. And I love this AU because Kinger is so much more assertive than he is in the show, just fighting back up against Kane's shenanigans, which I enjoyed that dynamic. And we have a pretty fun part where Pomni's trying to recall what her past is, and then this is where we get like the plot twist where she has multiple memories, because as she was falling into the center part of the, I guess, the universe, she was kind of anchoring to different realities. This is where this artist refers to a lot of different other AUs, like the Office AU, the Fight Club AU, Casino Enterprise, one called Shonen, and a Fantasy World one, which is nice to see that integration. And we see that Pomni's trying to recall her own past, and she's going into all these different backstories. And she also mentions the circus, so I guess she's also talking about the Amazing Digital Circus past. And yeah, I really love that concept. We have Pomni recalling her own name in this comic as well. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the spin on this last one. And it's literally like a mix between the Amazing Digital Circus and Gamerverse, so I would recommend this read. So please feel free to check it out on Revolver-D Tumblr page. And that's it for this tier. There is 8 tiers in total, so if you want to see me complete this series, then I guess hit the subscribe button, press the like button, hit the bell notification, hit a comment. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah, if you want to see me finish this series, I guess just leave a comment or something. I'll continue doing it, because there is a lot left to go through, and I kind of enjoyed going through the first part, and it'd be interesting to see if there's more thorough entries on this iceberg. I love to read quite a lengthy comics. I know there's a couple comic series out there which are quite long, and it'd be quite nice to delve into them. But from what we've read so far, I really enjoyed the different concepts. Alright. Hopefully someone out there has been entertained by this, and if not, have a good day. And if you did enjoy it, have a good day, and I'll see you around. Au revoir.